Hi, I'm Darrell Crow, and I want to welcome you to today's show. I've gotten a few questions from some students, and so I'm going to read them, and we'll go ahead and answer them. And I may even call on a friend or two out in the audience to help me with the answer. Would that be okay?
No.
They're ready to go. I got to tell you, they're ready to go. Okay, well, the first question that I see is, says, Darrell, I missed the open house. Is there any way I can visit your You Compete Club for a couple of days? And the answer is absolutely. If you miss the open house, I'll be very happy to send you an account good for a couple of days so you can go online and view it and see if this is something that means anything to you. Just send me an email at darrell@darrellcrow.com. Okay, I have another question. This is from Jose. And Jose says, I've been looking all over your website for the art supplies. Where can I buy them? Well, Jose, go to the page. If you go to darrellcrow.com and you look at the menus on the left-hand side, you'll see something that says art supplies. Just click on that and you'll find links to stores where I buy my art supplies. And I've arranged for discounts. Some are offering 25%, some are offering 10%. Just go ahead and click there. I personally do not resell art supplies because I think you deserve the discounts and not myself. Okay, I'm only into the business of teaching you how to paint. And that way all the manufacturers can have all the fun, the stores can have all the fun with your repeated purchases. But I think if you go to the links page that I just mentioned, you're going to find some great buys. Also, you can always check eBay. eBay is a great source for auctioning. Or you can even put a little announcement on our Yahoo group, or even search YouTube and Facebook to see if people are selling some supplies. Okay, next one is a question from Hannah Schultz from South Africa. And she writes, she says, Darrell, I'm a beginning art student, and I've just gotten your set of tapes or DVDs. And as I practice, I see my skills improving, but I really want to leap ahead. So how can I really learn to paint really fast? Well, you know, Hannah, that's not an unusual question. I get that quite a bit. People are asking me, what can I do to essentially increase and by leaps and bounds my art skills? And you know something? That's true, not just for artists, but just for about anybody who is trying to increase their skills. Now, I hadn't planned on doing this, but I've got a devilish thought that just came across my mind. And many of you have communicated by email with Joe Kaczynski, who's here at the studio. And in fact, Joe doesn't even know that I'm going to do this. But I'm actually going to talk to Joe. Joe, you out there?
To what do I owe this honor, Darrell? My God.
Well, you were a musician for how long?
Oh, about 25 years.
Were you any good?
I was the best. Fabulous. Words can't describe how good I was.
Well, folks, a lot of people don't know this, but he's actually quite a modest guy. And for about 25 years, he played all over New England. He played with some legendary superstars, I would say, like Frank Sinatra. Who were some of the other ones, Joe?
El Martino, Gene Martin, Frankie Valli, Tony Bennett, Sarah Vaughan.
And did these guys know you?
They did after we were done with them because we totally destroyed their careers for a short period of time.
Well, anyway, Joe, I'd like to ask you a few questions about your career as a musician. Would that be okay?
I was afraid of that, but I mean, it looks like I have no choice. Go ahead.
I'd normally bring him up here to the camera, but, you know, I don't want anybody that's better looking than me up here. So, Joe, let's get started here with a couple of questions.
Okay.
Now, Joe, how many years would you say you played in Boston area?
25.
25 years. Now, when your group first started out, were you the same as 25 years later?
Absolutely not. I mean, we started out not knowing where we were going, how it was going to work out. But we developed a technique of just asking people what they wanted. And once we found out what they wanted and what kept them up on the dance floor, that was our secret of success.
And how did you improve your techniques?
By knowing the styles people were looking for. I practiced, and we just practiced, and we practiced to make sure we did those songs just the way people remembered them.
Okay, so a lot of practice went in there.
Oh, absolutely.
How about new things? What made you try new things, or did you?
Oh, of course we did. We try to keep up with the current music that was popular, the top 10, top 20 at the time. But we found our audience was more for the 50s music. So we did that. We went exactly with our audience. We could tell after a few years by looking at the people exactly what they wanted to hear.
Now, what year did you start playing?
Started playing, let's see, 1963.
All right, during 1963, who do you think was the hottest, rockinest, popular musician group?
I'm going to have to say, boy, that's a good question. I'd have to think about that. 63, probably Creedence Clearwater Revival.
Now, were they as popular as, say, the Rolling Stones?
In the crowd, we played at exclusive restaurants and supper clubs, so I have to say yes.
Okay, well, aside from your market, I'd like to talk about worldwide market.
Worldwide, the Stones, yeah.
The Stones. Now, were the Beatles more than the Stones?
Not at that stage. They did become very, very popular a little bit further down the road.
Absolutely. When we think of the Beatles, we don't think 1963.
Right.
Because what happened is the Beatles made a tour in 1964 throughout the United States, and they appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show, and in fact, they were so popular, one of their greatest fans was my wife, Adrian. And she actually went to the San Francisco airport when they landed just to greet them. And they would throw jelly beans out at the group because, was it Ringo that liked the jelly beans?
I think it was Ringo, yep.
Yeah, so it was after that not only did the Beatles propel into becoming stars, but they actually became music legends after that. And I rarely run across people that have, I would say, risen higher than the Beatles, and in such a short period of time. But did you know that their keys to success, their keys to becoming better, started in a strip joint?
Yes.
Absolutely. Now, what I mean is that the Beatles, when they first started out, they were pretty good, but they were terrible. They were just teenagers.
Yep.
And they went all the way over to Hamburg, Germany, and they did over 800 hours of performance there.
Yep.
Now, Joe, how many hours of performance is backed up by how many hours of practice?
If you're going to perform for a 4-hour gig, which was the normal gig time, you probably practice for 2 days prior to that.
So for every hour, you're practicing another 4 hours.
That's correct.
So, folks, think about this for a second. Practice, practice, practice. That's one of the things that you learn no matter what kind of a skill set that you're trying to put together. You need to practice. Now, in particular, with the Beatles, that was recorded, they did 800 hours of performance. Now, that's backed up by 3,200 hours of practice. So that meant, as a group of 4 guys, that's almost 5,000 hours of playing in, how long were they in Hamburg?
Oh, God.
A couple years?
Probably 2 years, yeah.
Yeah, but when they came back, now the interesting thing, when they came back, people liked them. Now, I'm not going to ask how many of you have been in strip joints. I would never go there, and that's true. However, Joe, can you think of an environment that's any worse than a strip joint for a musician to play in?
Absolutely not. It's one of the most, I mean, nobody's paying attention to you, basically. So
I can't understand that.
I can't understand it either.
But if they're paying attention to you in a strip joint whose main attraction is something else, then why and how did that happen? And that begins the secret, okay? Let me tell you a little bit about what I think the environment is like if you're in a strip joint. First off, the customers there are kind of kooky and weird. There are probably a lot of nice guys in there, and there's a lot of strange guys in there. Maybe there's strange girls and strange, nice girls there. I don't know. However, I'm sure there are fights occasionally.
Oh, I'm sure there are.
Some of them are inebriated and they don't know what's going on because they just happen to be out of it. They're on another planet, so to speak. So it doesn't matter how much you practice in an area like that, does it?
No, it doesn't.
Because they're not going to hear you. They're not paying attention to you. You're not the main attraction. So, folks, look. There's a group of 4 guys, 4 teenagers playing in a strip joint, and they're not the main attraction. Nobody has to listen to them, and I doubt there's very few people that went there to see them. Their attention was on something else. And how did that help them? How did that possibly help them? Well, let's think about it. If you're sitting up there, what's the worst that can happen to a musician as he plays, Joe?
That nobody responds, they're talking, they're not paying attention. I mean, you actually lose your feeling for the music because nobody is reacting to it. You need to get some kind of a reaction, whether it's positive or negative.
Okay, so if you turn that around and you say, okay, nobody wants me here, but this is my opportunity. I'm going to turn this strip joint into a music laboratory, then your mindset is different, isn't it?
That's correct.
Because now what you're doing is you're able to try out new things, new harmonies, new instruments.
Yep.
You're able to get your act together. Do you know that when the Beatles first started out in Hamburg, they didn't even know enough songs in order to play a full 4 hours?
Yep.
They'd have to repeat the songs.
Well, we got all our training in small little clubs ourselves before we moved on to the finer nightclubs in the area.
Now, do you think the Beatles would have been able to have developed their sound and what works for the people if all they had done was played in John Lennon's apartment in Liverpool?
No.
There was one missing ingredient, and that's this, folks: instant feedback. Okay? You see, when you're in a strip joint, you're the least attractive thing when you're playing music.
Well, we don't know. They might have done some special dances that we're unaware.
Nah, let's not get there.
All right.
Okay. The main thing is that the Beatles had instant feedback by a live customer base. Okay? The customers weren't there for them, I'll be honest with you, and they were on it. But they were able to try out new things, because if you can divert the attention of a strip joint audience to your music, where they're clapping and dancing and they'd rather spend their time listening to your music than watching what else is going on stage, you're going to have a unique sound. You're going to strike what people want to hear, just like you said earlier, Joe. So the secret ingredient, folks, is your ability to have instant feedback. Now, why am I telling this story about a successful musician group? As an artist who's starting, and most of us start out as art students, and we develop into artists very quickly, okay? Because as our techniques improve, and they do improve through practice, but we leap forward to being even better when we have instant feedback. When other people are telling us what they like, when we have an environment in which we can try new things, all right? So let's take another look at how you might get instant feedback. The very first thing I would tell you, show your work in front of real people. Don't just post it on a website that nobody visits. Go down to the barber shop. Ask your local beauty parlor if they'll display your works. And leave a little paper pad behind that says, tell me what you think. Is there something else you would like to see? Hold open houses at your home. Don't worry about whether or not you're going to make a sale, because what you're more interested in your early years is the feedback. What do people like? What don't they like? What do they see when they look at that? Ask, ask, ask. And better yet, you know, Joe, there is one more thing you can do that will give you faster feedback than showing your work. And you know what that is?
What is that, Darrell?
That's teaching.
Ah.
Learn to teach. And you don't need to know much. You just simply share what you know. That's all teaching is. It's sharing what you know, what you have personally done. And there's nothing that will make you learn more things than being in front of a bunch of students who are excited and they want to learn to do it just like you. That's why I started teaching, was to help myself grow and to help the people that were my friends who wanted to be taught. And as I learned more and more, and nothing drove me to learn more and more than being in front of a classroom. Today, I would not paint portraits, I would not paint wildlife, I wouldn't paint anything but landscapes and tall ships and seascapes if it wasn't for the desire that I saw in my students to learn even more things. So my students have become my biggest impetus for growth. I'm not telling you to become a teacher. What I am telling you is you need instant feedback. So Hannah, as you look at how can you rapidly grow as an artist, start teaching. Show your friends how to do this. Show your work. I'm Darrell Crow, and yes, you can paint.